CHistrue. Today I intend to talk about utopia and the question of where to go from here. We see the injustice of the world as it is, and I think that if you've been with my channel long enough, you do too. And so I'm going to talk about utopia. I'm going to talk about the next step in human evolution, the real next step in human evolution, not some elitist idea that we, or the super rich and the 1% merge with machines and go off into space and leave the rest of us. I'm talking about the people's next step in human evolution. Now, utopia means no place. And that's often used by so-called realists against the idea of utopia. And yet it is my position that when you have explored every place that is, and you have not found it to your liking, then maybe we give no place a try. And so I want to talk about two plausible versions of what utopia could be. One in the 19th century left anarcho-socialist tradition, and the other in a kind of libertarian market tradition. Let's I'm not going to necessarily privilege one over the other. I tend to side more with the first, but I'm going to present the second as a plausible one. Now, the market one, by the way, would be a left libertarian idea of libertarianism. It would not be the familiar right libertarian ideas that you generally find on the internet, but the second version would include some form of market that would survive. So I'm going to present both of them and discuss. First of all, before I do, very brief pause. I have a scientific question, and this is for longtime subscribers who remember a lot of my videos on math and science and remember the glory days and wish I'd get back to them. I'd like to have some understanding of ball lightning as a scientific phenomenon. I'd like any possible links that you have on scientific explanations for ball lightning. Peer-reviewed only, please. I don't want links to websites claiming that they are the souls of pharaohs on their way to being reincarnated as alligators. Sorry, thank you, but no thank you. Peer-reviewed science. I believe that I've actually observed that phenomenon, and I'd like to have some sense of what it could be. So that's my side note. Back on the subject of utopia. The traditional left understanding of utopia, be it left anarchist or be it Marxian, and again, by Marxian or Marxist, I'm referring not to Leninism. I'm referring to the idea of a worker state that actually does wither away. Okay, the classic 19th century Marxist tradition. So I would say according to those two narratives, we have the stage of feudalism, and after that stage, capitalism supersedes feudalism because of its more rational basis to it. Capitalism is seen by 19th century left tradition as being inherently more rational than feudalism. Feudalism was inherently more rational than the slave societies of the ancient world. And they would say that given the inherent rationality of capitalism, at some point the workers will have enough scientific and technical knowledge that they can actually take over the system. They don't need managers, they don't need capitalists. They would have enough knowledge of machines to be able to take over the machines. Now, there is also a Luddite or a kind of primitivist tradition within 18th and 19th century radicalism that is its own conversation. I think we see it in the thinking of John Zerzan. We see it in the thinking of the anarcho-primitivists. The problem I would have with it is that we're probably not going to return to Paleolithic man. I don't think that that's going to happen. Therefore, if it does, great, but since it probably won't happen, I'm not really going to discuss it. I'm going to discuss more of how more of the more technological side of that tradition. So, the workers have enough scientific and technical knowledge to take over the system, and in the so-called utopian tradition, the type of tradition that Marx didn't like too much, the workers themselves more or less implement a kind of decentralized communalistic tradition where they dismantle the state right away. And as far as I'm concerned, if I were to go with the left utopian tradition, that's the one I would go with. I would not go with a state that withers away, because it's a little bit like in capitalism we have the warranty but void where prohibited. Okay, I don't believe states wither away. I don't think that they do that. That's my own personal opinion. So I would go more with Martin Buber, more with Proudhon, more with Saint-Simon. Well, actually not Saint-Simon so much, but let's say Fourier. Okay, the idea of the state that doesn't wither away, just ceases to exist, and that's replaced by a federated system. Now, a possible sticky wicket with that is that both Marx and the Utopians both made assumptions that are predicated in 19th century industrialism. In physics, you had Newton. In biology, you had Darwin. And in both cases, you had a set of heavily mechanistic assumptions about how the world works. Today, we have and the point being that of my bringing that up is that the both are premised on the economic reality of the factory floor. And with the factory floor, to really understand those machines that they had in the 19th century, you needed to know algebra, you needed to know trigonometry, you needed to know calculus. And those things you can learn. The workers could learn those things. And the workers can learn those things. Today, though, with computers and with ever more abstract financial models, it may be much harder for workers as such to get control of the machinery of the economy. Let me close that for a second. There we go. That may just be that much more difficult. And I have to be honest. Contrary to Marx, who claimed that his socialism was scientific, I would say in a lot of ways it is a faith. You would have to say that the faith in any kind of utopia really is a faith, but the faith that you could ever get to in a more egalitarian society like that, it is a faith. It's a faith that I support, but it is a faith. And so I have to present the possibility of Plan B in case it is not possible to get beyond the current capitalist model and the current machinery of the state. So Plan B would be something along the lines of a kind of left libertarian utopia, where market capitalism does survive. And yet, its monopolistic abuses are curbed. As it is now, we have a currency is issued by a private system. The Federal Reserve is neither federal nor a reserve, as many libertarians and people of that nature will point out, and they are correct. It is neither federal nor a reserve. It is a private bank that consolidates and monopolizes the money. That means that the money is printed, there is interest owed on it. Well, in the CHistrue planet, that would no longer be the case. In fact, one way or the other, either version of utopia we go with, that would not be the case. And yet, if currency did continue, and if we did continue to have a currency system, the issuance of debt-free currency would be the first order of business. With debt-free currency, interest would go by the wayside. We could have investment in production without the need for interest. We would also have much less of a need for taxation. In fact, we might very well have none if government could simply print its own money. And yes, government would survive in some form under this second alternative plan. It is my opinion that the currency would be backed by the productive capacity of the planet, and that productive capacity is backed by ever-expanding, the very technology and expansion of technology that might make the first vision of utopia unworkable. And I said might. I didn't say that it did. I said that it might. Might very well make the second version of utopia a good second best to the first. And that would be that the dollar in your pocket would be worth more, ever more, ever more, and ever more. And that you, my fellow citizens, would have a guaranteed income based on your share of the national economy. And with ever-expanded consumer spending, we would have spend more and more and more until it cycled upwards as almost like an induction, okay? As like an induction, a Tesla coil almost. Colonies on the moon, trips to Mars, you name it, it would be possible if we could get this to work. So one utopia or the other, both of them are preferable to the sinkhole we're in now. So think about it and let me know your thoughts. CHistrue,